If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana makes car selling fast and easy from start to finish. Enter your license plate or VIN and get a real offer in seconds, down to the penny. If you accept, Carvana will come pick up your car from your driveway. Or you can drop it off at one of our car vending machines. Either way, you get paid instantly. It's fast, transparent, and 100% online. Car selling that saves your time. That's Carvana.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome. I'm Roger Stone, and you're joining me on the Roger Stone Show, where every week we give you our incisive political analysis based on my 50 years in the corroded rectum of the two-party system and my experience in 13 national presidential campaigns. Here we talk politics, news, history, and occasionally food and style. I want to start by thanking the thousands of people who wished my wife a happy birthday. Her birthday was actually last Friday. Nydia Bertrand de Espinosa Stone, of course, a cancer survivor, a proud Cuban American, wife, mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. She was my rock during the Russian collusion hoax, in which I was falsely charged on 7 criminal counts, not because I actually did anything wrong, but in an attempt to try to flip me and get me to testify falsely against President Donald Trump. So for her birthday, I sent Mrs. Stone 8 dozen long stem red roses. I wanted a Donald Trump type move. These roses are beautiful, almost as beautiful as she is. God bless you, baby, and happy birthday. Well, the No Kings rally played out this past Saturday. Democrats staged their No Kings Day, an attempt to whip up a rage by branding President Donald Trump as an authoritarian fascist king who must be dethroned. This is kind of ironic, coming from a party that nominated a candidate for president without a single Democratic vote being cast for them in the primaries or caucuses, and in a convention in which no one was allowed to challenge the Queen, Kamala Harris. So getting lectured about democracy, small d, by leftists is somewhat hysterical. Their own actions actually reveal a chilling embrace of fascism, defined in the dictionary, we'll use Merriam-Webster's, as a political philosophy exalting nation and often race above the individual, marked by centralized autocratic control, severe regimentation, and the suppression of opposition and free speech. You see, Democrats wield race not like Nazi Germany's Aryan supremacy, but as a cynical tool to divide and retain power. Joe Biden's claim, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, and Barack Obama's divisive rhetoric stoke racial tensions, painting white men as society's greatest threat while ignoring the fact that black men, 6% of the population, are responsible for over half of the violent crimes. On the other hand, record numbers of African Americans voted for Donald Trump and the Republicans in the most recent election, which shows that the old rules are being broken down. This entire thing fuels a victimhood, a narrative so deep that Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson calls minorities disabled, an insulting implication that black Americans lack the intelligence or the ability to obtain an ID. This is a patronizing and insulting racist trope. The truth is, the Republican Party is the party of civil rights, the party that emancipated the slaves, the party that gave us affirmative action. the party that passed the first major piece of civil rights legislation in 1958, when Senate Democrats, led mostly by Southerners, sought to block that important legislation. Democrats weaponized federal power with fascist precision in order to crush dissent. Under Biden, the FBI labeled traditional Catholics violent extremists, infiltrating churches in the lawless Arctic Frost campaign, where they actually targeted essentially anyone who disagreed with them. I was on their secret list. They trampled the First Amendment rights of people like me. We now know, since Elon Musk purchased Twitter, turning it over to X, and releasing all of their internal documents, that the intelligence agencies of the U.S. government worked hand in glove with executives at Twitter to censor anyone who questioned the outcome of the 2020 election, to censor anyone who supported Donald Trump, to censor anyone who questioned the safety and effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccinations, to censor anyone who questioned the shocking proceeds from Hunter Biden's laptop, labeling it falsely as Russian disinformation. Then, of course, Obama's Fast and Furious scandal saw the ATF, or the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, illegally funneling guns to Mexican cartels, killing a U.S. Border Patrol agent with no accountability. This was a reckless abuse that reeks of fascist lawlessness. But when the Attorney General, Eric Holder, was subpoenaed to explain himself before Congress, he stoutly refused. But he wasn't charged or arrested, as others have been. The FBI's Crossfire Hurricane basically spied on Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, violating all constitutional norms to target political foes. Obama's smug elections have consequences and I won taunts, paired with his I've got a pen and a phone boast, signaled dictatorial rule by executive fiat, bypassing the Congress. You see, Democrats grow government, just like a fascist king would. They encourage dependency on the government, just like a fascist king would. They even work to replace peaceful American citizens with criminals, terrorists, and illegal aliens, just to add to their House of Representatives seats and to try to build a larger, dependent, and more dependable voter list. Biden's White House, through the FBI, strong-armed big tech to censor conservatives, as I say, on COVID, elections, and more, creating a digital iron fist that mirrors fascist control over information. Vaccination mandates threatening jobs and freedoms were pure authoritarianism, underscored by his chilling, "Our patience is wearing thin" warning. Remember that? Then, of course, they claim that there's no amendment to the Constitution is absolute, undermining core rights in the U.S. Constitution, such as the Second Amendment. NPR, PBS, and legacy media, propped up by the taxpayers, serve as Democrat propaganda arms, spewing leftist narratives, while demonizing conservatives like me. Biden's regulatory overreach, banning gas stoves, incandescent bulbs, and high water appliances, while mandating electrical vehicles, strips choice under climate dogma, another fascist obsession with controlling our daily lives. Obama's call for a civilian national security force, as powerful as our military, set the stage for such tyranny. To this day, Democrats utilize the very fascist Antifa as their own modern black shirts. Antifa has been declared a terrorist organization by President Donald Trump and is undergoing a vigorous investigation to determine who funds this effort towards mayhem, violence, and death. Yet, George Conway is seen at the No Kings rally wearing an I Am Antifa t-shirt. George Conway, the former husband of Kellyanne Conway, the very savvy Trump advisor who's reinvented himself as a leftist. He was the guy who came up with the idea of suspending or I should say extending the statute of limitations under New York state law that allowed for E. Jean Carroll, who I think is a liar, to launch her civil sexual assault legal case against Donald Trump. Little did Conway know that he would end up capturing Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Andrew Cuomo, who were both subsequently sued in civil sexual assault actions. The Democrats' political persecutions echo third world tyranny, in my opinion, embodying the Soviet maxim, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. Trump himself faced these fabricated New York charges, while January 6 protesters languished in gulag-like conditions for minor offenses, unlike published leftist writers. Biden's Ukraine ultimatum, if the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting the $1 billion, shielded his son's dealings with the Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, wielding U.S. aid like a mob boss. Only last week, we learned that the CIA was fully aware of Biden's corruption, but as vice president, Biden leaned on them to suppress distribution of the results of their investigation. The House Intelligence Committee has more than proven the epic corruption of the Biden crime family. Remember when Joe Biden told us in the debates, not he nor a single member of his money had made, neither he nor a single member of his family had received a penny from foreign sources. That was, of course, a lie. Rigging primaries by blocking challengers, reshuffling the calendar, ensured that party elites, not voters, chose the last presidential nominee, cementing the fascist control over democracy. These are the people who sponsored the No Kings protest. The protest was a flop, in my view. Every weird leftist came out to whine about President Trump's impact on the country. Following in the line with recent Antifa directives, many protesters dressed in cartoon or animal costumes. What's that all about? There were people there dressed like crabs, dinosaurs, squirrels, pigs, and Pokemon. It was a much older, whiter crowd, dominated mostly by people who get their news from mainstream media. And the fact that the protest in Times Square literally evaporated at exactly 1 p.m. tells me that most of the people who were there were paid to be there. So the No Kings demonstration against President Donald Trump was a massive flopperoo. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is still president, still working every day for peace, with exciting news last week that he will travel shortly to Budapest to meet with President Vladimir Putin of Russia in order to bring the Russia-Ukraine conflict to an end. Every American prays for his success. You're tuned in to the Roger Stone Show right here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Wherever you do, don't go away because we've got more politics.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. Peter Baker, writing in the once great New York Times, has an article entitled, "In Going After His Foes, Trump Sets a Precedent That Could Haunt His Allies." Subheadline, President Trump's retribution campaign risks ushering in a cycle of retaliation in which each new administration takes aim at the last one. In this article, Mr. Baker says, Mr. Trump's campaign to imprison, fire, or otherwise punish his political foes and use government power to crack down on free speech he does not like has broken norms that stood for generations. With all due respect, I must question whether Mr. Baker is on drugs, or whether he is severely mentally ill, or whether he's just a complete and total distortionist. Those who accuse Donald Trump of weaponizing the criminal justice system to go after his political enemies and who claim that he's trying to limit free speech of his critics are in fact describing precisely, exactly what they themselves have done over the last 12 years. Donald Trump's drive to prosecute the cabal of criminals who, based on both declassified documents released by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and by the House Intelligence Committee as well as the House Oversight Committee, most definitely prove that Barack Obama and his co-conspirators launched a seditious conspiracy, including fabricating evidence to justify spying on candidate Donald Trump, fabricating evidence of Russian collusion, and staging 2 completely fraudulent impeachment trials. One of those trials, it turns out, was specifically designed to cover up the corruption of Joe Biden as vice president. So the so-called Ukrainian impeachment was both offensive and defensive. They also colluded with state prosecutors in Georgia, Nevada, and New York to fabricate crimes in those jurisdictions, as well as their ongoing attempts to bankrupt Trump, keep him off the ballot in all 50 states, and put him in prison. It is beyond belief that anyone could think that Trump is weaponizing the government to punish his enemies when that was, of course, precisely what was done to him. The Democrats and their handmaidens in the media, like Mr. Baker and his colleagues, who are whining today about Trump's revenge tour, hope that the American people have complete and total amnesia. They egregiously abuse both the law and the U.S. Constitution in their maniacal drive to destroy Trump and his supporters, myself included. Once again, they are guilty of exactly what they accuse us of. All of this, of course, comes in the wake of the indictments of John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor, James Comey, the former FBI Director, and New York State Attorney General Letitia James. Joining me shortly to break down the case against Letitia James and also some of the shocking new developments regarding that case, Joel Gilbert, investigative journalist, documentary filmmaker, will join the Roger Stone Show. In the meantime, breaking news, it has been reported that the U.S. Secret Service just discovered a hunting stand with a direct line of sight to the location where President Donald Trump exits Air Force One. This stand was located at Palm Beach International Airport. You obviously will not see this on mainstream media. There are, of course, no hunting areas anywhere near the Palm Beach airport, proving once again that if you support the president or if you're just a loyal American who wants the success of your country, prosperity, freedom, and peace, I urge you to pray for our president, pray for his family, and pray for his safety. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back with Joel Gilbert and the latest on New York Attorney General Letitia Tish James.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Following up on that breaking news, John Solomon at Just the News now reporting that a hunting stand with sight line to President Trump's Air Force One exit area was found at the Palm Beach International Airport. FBI Director Kash Patel says the Bureau is investigating the situation. Prior to the president's return to West Palm Beach, the U.S. Secret Service discovered what appeared to be an elevated hunting stand within line sight of Air Force One. According to Patel, no individuals were located at the scene. The FBI has since taken the investigatory lead, flying in resources to collect all evidence from the scene and deploying our cell phone analytic capabilities. This is something I've talked about here on the show, that if you support the president or if you're just a good American who wants America to prosper, President Trump needs your prayers. I believe his election and the greatest comeback in American political history was guided by divine intervention because on paper, given the disadvantages and the fact that he was fighting two fights at once, not only a campaign to become president of the United States, but the tsunami of lawfare meant to interrupt his campaign, the attempts to keep him off the ballot, the attempts to bankrupt him, the attempts to humiliate him, and the attempts to put him in jail. It was a miracle, I think, a divine miracle that he returned to the White House. And now he's doing the Lord's work as a peacemaker. I've talked to here about why I believe he's the one who should be given the Nobel Peace Prize, but then I learned that Alfred Nobel, the man for whom the Nobel Peace Prize is named, is actually the inventor of dynamite. I guess he didn't want to be known as a merchant of death, so he set up this Norwegian committee to try to rehabilitate himself as an advocate for peace. Anyway, joining me now is Joel Gilbert. Joel is a documentary filmmaker and an investigative journalist, writing often for the Gateway Pundit. He has been way out in front, working in tandem with Sam Antar of WhiteCollarFraud.com in breaking the stories about the egregious series of crimes by New York Attorney General Letitia James. The New York Times and the Washington Post and other mainstream media outlets continue to insist that there was insufficient evidence to charge New York Attorney General Letitia James for mortgage fraud and bank fraud, but a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia thought otherwise, and now she faces justice. Joel Gilbert, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Great to be back. Thank you, Roger.
So you were involved in the very beginning of this. There is no question that Letitia James, in the power of attorney, involved in securing a mortgage on her Virginia home, said that she would make the home her principal legal residence, where she would live with her niece. Some may say, well, that's not all that a big deal, but the truth is, it is part, as you have demonstrated, of a much longer pattern of mortgage fraud and other financial fraud, including the lack of disclosure on her state-required disclosure form. So if you would kind of give us a refresher, Joel, let's start from the beginning. If I'm not mistaken, Letitia James claimed in her first application for a mortgage that her father was her husband in order to use his balance sheet to qualify for the mortgage.
That's absolutely correct. There's a period where it starts very early. She's only 24 years old. Her and her father pose as husband and wife to get a $30,000 loan so Letitia can buy a 2-story townhome in Queens. It continues to when she buys an apartment building in Brooklyn, 5-unit building, and she does a series of refinances over 20 years from 2001, where she always claims it's a 4-unit building or it's a 1-unit building in order to get residential interest rates and residential closing rates, which are both significantly lower than she would have gotten had she admitted it was a 5-unit building. She would have gotten commercial rates and commercial closing costs. And then amazingly, even after she was Attorney General of New York and a very high-profile person, she buys 3 properties in the state of Virginia, and on each one she either claims it'll be her primary residence or her secondary residence in order to qualify for the loan. So I have an article actually coming out tomorrow in Gateway Pundit where I trace this all back to her fake marriage to her father. And I believe that's what really sparked this lifetime of mortgage fraud. Because what happened is she created a precedent where she discovered that if she falsified personal information, she could get these financial rewards and never have a consequence for it. So it became this lifetime habit, and it turned into decades of mortgage misrepresentations. And I think what happens is when someone commits a mortgage fraud at a young age, it creates a psychological pattern that they think making fraudulent claims, especially with relatives like Letitia did both in Queens with her father and with her niece in Virginia, it teaches them that every time you do an act of deception, it makes you feel more invincible, and it makes her think she's being really clever. And the lines of being legal or criminal are kind of warped. She loses her sense of moral compass. So I think that's the only explanation for Letitia's behavior, because it really is a 43-year pattern. and she's going to have no success in court claiming that it wasn't my intent. You have to prove intent to convict someone. How can she avoid the jury believing she intended to do it when it was 43 years of fraud, and especially when she herself was prosecuting people for mortgage fraud in New York, so she definitely knew the law.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that she has actually prosecuted successfully people for doing precisely what she herself has done in this instance. I heard an incredible interview with that intellectual giant Joy Reid, in which Letitia said, prosecuting people for mortgage fraud is very, very rare. It's not nearly as rare as her prosecution of President Donald Trump under a state law under which no one in the history of the great Empire State has ever been prosecuted, in which he claimed that he overvalued the value of his assets in order to qualify for commercial real estate loans, all of which he paid back on time and in full, making the lenders as much as $40 million in interest. Every one of those lenders said publicly that they would do the deal again and they would lend the Trump organization money again on those terms. But, of course, they weren't allowed to testify in that trial because trials in Manhattan are politically rigged. You, however, were the first one to report about Letitia James' niece, who is a fugitive from justice. The UK Daily Mail followed you by several months, but it turns out the North Carolina Department of Adult Corrections is actively searching for Nakia Monique Thompson, the fugitive daughter of New York Attorney General Letitia James, who is living in this home in Virginia that Letitia lied to get a mortgage for. Tell us about this.
That's right. I mean, I guess it's a compliment. I broke this story back in August, and sure enough, here, 4 or 5 months later, it's broken all over the world that Letitia James is harboring a fugitive, which is her niece's daughter, in one of her Virginia homes. Now, what's interesting is Letitia, to defend herself after Sam Antar had broke that part of the story, she actually spoke publicly, and she said, the reason I bought this house with my niece was to provide a home for her children. I wanted her children to have a home, as if she's trying to get sympathy for helping kids. But in fact, both of the niece's daughters were adult jailbirds, one of them with an active arrest warrant out of North Carolina. I actually spoke to the probation department down there to ask when they were going to pick her up. And Letitia knows she's harboring a fugitive. She bought the home specifically to harbor a fugitive. So that's another 5-year sentence. So I think that with all these additional indictments coming, Letitia James herself might have a longer rap sheet than her two nieces, because Letitia's fraud spans 43 years, while the two nieces have only got about 20 years of criminal activity going on. So it's a messed up family. It's a lot of crime running in the family. And Letitia has somehow felt not vulnerable. If she does fraudulent mortgage deals with her father or her niece, she somehow thinks it's okay. So I don't think she's going to get out of it.
And then, I guess late last week, a second niece, other than Nakia, hit the news. Can you tell us about that? Yeah.
Carolyn Hairston is the younger daughter. Now, she has felony charges for firearm possession. Some of her felonies are not public because she was under 18 at the time. We can't get all the information. But she has, just when you thought, mortgage fraud could not get more exciting, this girl has a Twitter account of her doing these X-rated acts and having an OnlyFans account where she's asking people to pay her to do sexual favors online. So it's a very messed up family. Now we can understand Letitia James a little better based on who her relatives are. But the Kayla Hairston deleted her Twitter account. I had the misfortune of looking at it. And she's another relative with criminal history that's living in one of Letitia's homes who has a Class 5 felony, who has all these arrests for grand larceny, for weapons possession, on and on. So Letitia's in good company. Her father participated in a fraud with her. Her niece's children are felons. I think the real Letitia James, real personality and family history is coming out now.
Speaking of Nakia Thompson, these were serious charges. This was not double parking, as I recall.
Oh, no. Nakia, by the way, is very close to Letitia. She, on her LinkedIn page, she said she worked for Letitia when she was public advocate, city council, and attorney general. So she knows Letitia quite well. And she has 20 years of crimes in Virginia, North Carolina. They include prison sentences for contributing to the delinquency of a minor, abuse of a child, grand larceny, assault and battery, trespassing. She even got a charge for, while she was in prison, she even got a charge for malicious conduct. So these are some nasty people that abuse. We got one abusing children, one with all these X-rated acts on Twitter looking for money. It's not a people I want to associate with, but I think Letitia's comfortable with them because she's one of them. She's committed more crimes than they have.
Yeah, looking at your story some months ago, not just contributing to the delinquency of a minor, but abuse of a child, possession of burglary tools, third-degree larceny, grand larceny, assault and battery, petty larceny, trespassing, shoplifting, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, possession of marijuana, driving with a suspended license, and conspiracy to commit larceny. Yet the mainstream media continues to insist that this is all just a revenge play by President Donald Trump, and there is no real crime here. It is interesting that the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, one Eric Siebert, who never disclosed that he had a conflict of interest in the James Comey case, which is in the same jurisdiction. Siebert's father-in-law, that is his wife's father, is the godfather to James Comey's daughter, and beyond that, he is also represented Comey himself. So those who are claiming that the Comey case, like the Letitia James case, is just weaponization of the criminal justice system, they thought that neither one of them would be punished. They thought that no grand jury would indict either one of them. Both James Comey, the former FBI director, and Letitia James, the highest law enforcement officer in New York State, charged by Donald Trump's appointee, Lindsay Halligan, who seems to be one impressive lady, dropped into the situation to pursue justice. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and we'll be right back with Joel Gilbert, investigative journalist, writing in this case for the Gateway Pundit, on the other side.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. In the next hour, we're going to be taking your calls and your emails. That number, 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222, or email us at askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. That's askstone@rogerstoneshow. Whether it is politics, news, fashion, food, no matter what your question, I'm going to be entertaining as many of your questions by email and by phone as we possibly can. And yes, I am going to give you one of my mother's great Hungarian recipes, so you might want to get a pad and a pen ready if you are a foodie. All right, we return to Joel Gilbert, investigative journalist and documentary filmmaker extraordinaire. It is really Joel Gilbert working very closely with Sam Antar at whitecollarfraud.com, kind of the Batman and Robin of investigative journalists when it comes to the epic corruption of Letitia James. Joel, do you think it is probable that Letitia James may face additional superseding charges, which I'm not a lawyer, but lawyers tell me is very common in cases like this, because once you have mortgage fraud and bank fraud, you often have tax fraud and wire fraud?
Well, when I look at the current charges, this is the minimal thing she did. This is the least of things that she did. She has a history of white-collar crime with mortgages, many of which are still within the statute of limitations. There's a whole separate grand jury in New York State, forget about Virginia, with that's covering all the crimes related to her Brooklyn apartment building, all the misrepresentations, all the phony information she gave to get a loan, the most recent of which was a credit line mortgage loan for $200,000 in 2021, where she claimed that her building only had one unit in it when it had 5, so she got lower interest rates and no high closing costs. So those are much more serious than what she did in Virginia. So I do believe if they're going to charge her in Virginia, they must have a plan to charge her everywhere else. I think Letitia's going to have to resign, maybe cop a plea for a few years in prison, because her nieces committed all kind of crazy crimes but didn't make any money. Letitia, she had white-collar crimes, and she made millions off of banks by scamming them year after year. So I think it's coming.
Yeah, what I found amazing here, this is the work, again, of Sam Antar, who figured out that there are astonishing items that were not reported on her legally required financial disclosure forms, that in fact, when it comes to her property in Norfolk, Virginia, she had 2 mortgages. Now, this is a property that is appraised at having a value of between $100,000 and $150,000, but in her 2023 disclosure, she listed 2 mortgages, a Freedom mortgage for between $150,000 and $250,000, and National Mortgage between $100,000 and $150,000. So the total mortgage value would be between $250,000 to $400,000 on a property that had been appraised with a value between $100,000 and $150,000. So the loan-to-value ratio is 167% to 400%. That's mathematically impossible. Understanding.
Well, let me point out that it appears she might have gotten multiple loans on the same property without telling the other lender. So the government has the ability to subpoena documents that Sam and I don't have the ability to do. So I think they have much more information than we have. And a reminder that it's a staggering irony, because Letitia James was supposed to enforce the law, enforce the mortgage laws, but she broke a ton of them, and no one's more deserving than her, because she targeted the president. She ran for office saying, I'm going to target somebody. We've never heard of that in this country. It's unheard of, so she deserves to be investigated, and I think we caught her.
She's the one, of course, famously said, no one is above the law. Evidently, that includes Letitia James herself. All right, I want to thank our guest, Joel Gilbert. You can follow him tomorrow, big story on the Gateway Pundit. And again, coming up, we take your calls at 800-848-9222, or you can email your questions at askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. We'll talk to you on the other side.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. And for the next hour is the time that we will take your calls. That number, 800-848-9222. Or you can email us at askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. Let's go right to the phones. Harriet in Brooklyn. You've called in. You have a question.
Thank you very much. Roger, this is more like a statement in this case. It usually is a question. I hope our president, God bless him, I love Donald J. Trump. He's saving the United States of America. Look at the headline of the New York Post, the front page. Mandami, I call him, not Zoran, but Iran Mandami, in gleeful selfie with WT World Trade Center terror of 1993, linked Amman, who called for jihad in New York City. He has his hand around. I got to tell you, there is a clear and present danger here. I read here that I didn't read the whole article, that Curtis Sliwa, hope Como and Curtis, may the best man win, but the guy Iran Mamdani has to be disqualified. There is enough information, because he lied on his citizenship papers. He didn't say that he was a jihadist. He is acting as a foreign policy president, saying he will arrest Netanyahu. He's accusing the United States and Israel of genocide. It goes on and on with illegal contributions from the Tides Foundation, from George Soros, from China. And Iran. They're running, videos of Iran Mani. They're praising him in Iran because they figure he'll be the head of Homeland Security. Now, I got to tell you, this is a clear and present danger. This is for you, President Trump. You got to arrest him one way or another. You got to get your Justice Department, and the way to do it is through a military tribunal. With Pete Hegseth, with Pam Bondi working. This is my opinion. Even Curtis said that he has to be disqualified. He is a threat to the president. He is a threat to the nation, and it's got to be stopped. You cannot have. He's not just a socialist. He is a national socialist, which means NAZI, which goes back to the founder of Hamas. You see that picture of in Berlin, 1941, of the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem sitting with Hitler. He established Hamas. He established the Muslim Brotherhood. You need to work on this, and you've got to protect the president and protect all of us here, Mr. President. God bless you. And that's my statement, Roger. And thank you so much for your help, and for Mr. Antar for all his research, and for Mr. Gilbert's research. You're saving the United States of America. You've got to save the president. This guy this is going to spread like a cancer throughout the whole country. And thank you. And remember, I worked for Victor Rizal during the Nixon administration. I know what murderers sound like. I know how they sound so sweet. I know what's going on here. Thank you so much for taking my call, Roger.
Harriet, thank you. This is a great call. You, of course, are referring to the fact that leftist New York City mayoral candidate Zohran the Ayatollah Mamdani, as I call him, gleefully campaigned this week with a notorious gay-hating Brooklyn imam who was actually an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and who's been linked to other terrorist activity in the United States, including publicly urging jihad on the Big Apple. The Democrat frontrunner to become the city's next mayor was seen laughing and grinning, standing arm in arm with Siraj Wahaji, the imam at Bedford-Stuy's Mosque. In a photo, the socialist himself posted on X a day after the recent mayoral debate. I listened to every word of that debate. I think they should call him Mamdaji after that. The greatest failure was on the part of the moderators to pin him down. He's continued to try to downplay his radicalism, doesn't admit to saying that 52% of your paycheck will go to taxes to pay for all of his programs, to give away stuff for free. He has said, Elon Musk himself posted this the other day, multiple times, that it is his intention to defund the police department. I think that is abundantly clear. And he specifically said he would raise taxes on white people. On the other hand, this debate was, I think, very stacked in his favor. No tough follow-up questions. He's allowed to kind of have it both ways. Constant use of code words when, in fact, he is aligned with the exact same ideology as those who attacked the World Trade Center on 9/11. Andrew Cuomo, to me, is just kind of out of gas. I thought Mamdani dispatched him extremely effectively when Cuomo stressed his experience, and Mamdani, who I'm not an admirer of, obviously said, what I lack in experience, I make up in integrity, and what you lack in integrity, you could never make up with experience. Devastating moment in that debate. I also think that the moderators shortchanged the only candidate who's talking real solutions and who has the courage to really challenge Mamdani, and that's Curtis Sliwa, who I don't think got a fair apportionment of the time in that debate. Harriet, thank you so much for your call. As to the president's authority to deport Mamdani, if it can be proven that he did in fact lie on his immigration papers, that may be a real possibility. It's not a matter I've studied, but it's a matter I will study now. Elena in Staten Island, you have a comment or a question.
Well, I do. Thank you, Roger. Letitia James can be tried and convicted in the public arena thanks to Mr. Antar and all the documents that he has uncovered. Everyone knows that she claimed to be her father's wife. Everyone knows that she has filed documents as a 4-unit versus 5-unit, the truth, which is in violation of her mortgage application. And when I see her at a public arena for Mamdani's campaign, and the crowd cheered her because she is going to win this case, just infuriates me because they're not paying attention to the evidence. And I know that it will come out, but in the meantime, she's claiming to be the victim of public prosecution.
You make an excellent point. By the way, all of these records on which she's chased are a matter of public record. The real credit goes to Bill Pulte, the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, which regularly has a fraud unit, and who first detected these egregious acts of fraud by Letitia James. Bill Pulte then referred that to the Justice Department, who referred it to the Eastern District of Virginia, where you have an interim U.S. attorney, Lindsay Halligan, selected by the president. The president fired the previous prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia, essentially because he was refusing to charge James Comey, the FBI director, whose corruption is every bit, perhaps even more egregious than that of Letitia James. The question for me boils down, however, to whether we will have a fair trial. You have a Biden-appointed judge in an extremely liberal jurisdiction, which the jury promises to be overwhelmingly Democrats. I learned the hard way in the District of Columbia, when you are charged in such a jurisdiction, the Constitution, the rules, the facts, the evidence, the truth, none of these things matter. In fact, you are actually prohibited from mounting a defense. In my case, for example, the judge specifically ruled that my lawyers were prohibited from raising the question of whether there was a political motivation in the charges against me or whether I had been selectively targeted for political reasons. Will the judge in the Eastern District of Virginia rule the same thing, that Letitia James cannot make those arguments? Frankly, I doubt it. But thank you so much for your call, Elena. Let's take one online. Here's one from Sam in Boca Raton, Florida. Says, I went to look at you on Instagram and suddenly you're gone. What happened? Well, I hate to say this, but yes, just last week, I was banned on Instagram. Now, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, as Roger J. Stone Jr., Roger J. Stone Jr. You can also find me on True Social at Real Roger Stone. I'd like to have the same handle in both places, but unfortunately somebody else owns that handle at True Social. But I set up a new Instagram account. Again, somebody had my name, Roger Stone. Somebody also had Roger J. Stone Jr. So I ended up setting up a new account under Roger Stone MAGA. And it went pretty well. I was very careful about what I posted there, by the way, both reels and comments. And I was shocked to learn that I got completely and totally canceled. They closed my account. I can't even access the posts that I put up. So I started out with about 537 followers, grew it to 15,000 when they decided to cancel me. they never informed me that I had violated their community rules, whatever those are. But now it turns out that they told me that I was banned because my posts were inauthentic. Inauthentic? Now I know why they said that. Instagram reported that I died on November 16th, 2024. They said that 74-year-old American political consultant and strategist passed away on that date. They went on to say that I was born on May 11th, 1950 in Grayson County, Virginia, grew up in Mount Airy, North Carolina, graduated from the North Surrey High School in 1968. I'm very much alive, as you can tell. I was born in Norwalk, Connecticut, had my first Holy Communion, my baptism at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Norwalk, Connecticut, my first Holy Communion, and my confirmation at St. Aloysius Catholic Church in New Canaan, Connecticut. I'm actually a graduate of John Jay High School in Katona, New York. So they have the wrong person. They went on to say, Roger Stone is a well-known figure in American politics, having worked on various presidential campaigns, including Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and Donald Trump. No, I was banned because they don't like what I have to say. This is censorship by the hard left, working in tandem still today with social media platforms like Instagram. These people need to give it up. We'll be right back to take more of your questions on the other side. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show, where we're taking your calls in a segment we call Ask Stone. You can call us at 800-848-9222, or you can email us your question at askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. Jay in New Jersey, let's go to you. You have a question or a comment.
Roger, thank you for taking my call. You know, I see you and Alex Jones. I'm a great big fan of what you do, talking with him about. And I actually want to thank you for your follow recently. That was a great honor. And about my question just is, you know, we've seen all these indictments. It's only way to the tyrannical administration from abusing their power. And my question is, you know, how confident are you in the potential convictions? Because the way I see it, if we don't get strong convictions on all these cases, these deterrents won't be deterrents at all, and the next Democrat administration will be emboldened to go even further with their weaponization of the justice system.
You raise an excellent question, and I have concerns about that, as I expressed not long ago. The Eastern District of Virginia is extremely liberal. You're going to get, in any case there, you're likely to get a Obama or Biden appointed judge. You're going to get a jury that is top heavy, if not dominated by Democrats. I experienced this firsthand in my own trial, where the judge violated my constitutional rights, including withholding exculpatory evidence from my attorneys. Robert Mueller had actually concluded in his long redacted hidden final report that he'd found no evidence of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or any other crime on my part, but the judge wouldn't give that to my lawyers. In fact, we asked for the entire unredacted report. The judge, Amy Berman Jackson, said that she would review the report in her chambers and give us the sections relevant to me. Somehow she forgot to give us the part on page 178, which said exactly as I say, that Mueller had found no evidence of Russian collusion or collaboration with WikiLeaks on my part. So I was charged with covering up for Donald Trump. Those are the judge's words, to which I say, covering up exactly what? The good news, if there is any, is I believe that federal prosecutors can make a case that there's an ongoing, continuing, seditious conspiracy that began on July 17th, 2017, to claim that Russians had interfered with our presidential election to assist in the election of Donald Trump, for which there is no evidence whatsoever. even Robert Mueller, with unlimited funds and unlimited legal authority, could find any such evidence. They then shifted their focus to obstruction, claiming that Trump had obstructed their investigation, which never had any probable cause or legitimacy to begin with. And they failed. But that same seditious conspiracy continues through the 2020 election. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, now heading a task force to examine the credibility and the reliability and the vulnerability of electronic voting machines, presumably looking at both the 20 and 24 elections. Hopefully we'll get news there. But then the conspiracy continues to the lawfare in New York and in Georgia and in Nevada, in which they worked with prosecutors. And then it manifests itself in the raid at Mar-a-Lago, which means this trial can take place in the Southern District of Florida. And I think that when we come back, I'll talk about who I think ought to be charged. But, Jay, thank you for your call. You're tuned into The Roger Stone Show. Again, that number, 800-848-9222. We'll be right back to take more of your calls.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. We're taking your questions by both phone and email. Again, that phone number, 800-848-9222. The email, askstone@rogerstoneshow.com. We'll go to the email. Here's a question from Lorenzo in Margate, New Jersey, who asks, do you think the New Jersey election will be fair and honest? I'm going to be honest with you, I have very deep concerns about this. The decision by Democrat members of the Passaic County Board of Elections to block the use of security cameras in ballot storage areas and their refusal to require a sign-in log for anyone accessing mail-in ballots is very deeply alarming. Now, the fact that the Board of Elections chairman also happens to be the county Democrat Party chairman is an egregious conflict of interest that makes it even worse. It's not incidental. In recent years, Passaic County has been home to some of the most infamous voter fraud schemes and among the slowest counties to count ballots and certify elections in the entire state. Frankly, given that, the Passaic County Republican Party is justified in their suspicion about what happens outside of public view, and the New Jersey Republican Party must stand firm with their legal demands for election integrity and transparency. It is abundantly clear that this race is shifting very quickly after Mickey Sherrill, the congresswoman from, I believe, Morris County, perhaps the worst Democrat candidate for governor in the history of the Garden State. And that's saying a lot in a state where they nominated and elected Jim Florio, Jim McGreevey, and the current disaster, Phil Murphy. If you watch this debate with her opponent, Jack Ciattarelli, she couldn't remember whether she had made 3 trades on the stock market based on information she got as a member of the House Defense Appropriations Committee for a profit of $7 million, essentially tripling her net worth. But when she was faced with those facts, she said she couldn't remember whether she did that or not. I can't imagine a nominee who's more out of touch. It was obvious in that debate that she's familiar with federal issues, but she has very little familiarity with the state issues facing New Jersey, particularly property taxes, high crime, over-regulation. I watched the polls here very closely. I point out that the Emerson College poll now has the race tied at 43-43. Sherrill's lead has narrowed from somewhere between 8 and 10 points in early September to well within the margin of error. Other pollsters have showed the race similarly close. So I'm still optimistic here that the momentum is with Ciattarelli. I do think that he can win the race. But I do think the Republicans need to be cautious about election integrity, and their lawyers need to be ready to go into court if this kind of egregious cheating goes on in the election. But I thank you very much, Lorenzo, for your question. Let's go to the phones again. Alex in Queens, you had a question.
Mrs. Stone, the esteem that I hold in you grows daily. Half Magyar also. I wanted to ask you, what do you think of the chances of a RICO statute prosecution with a lot of the hoaxers, the Russian hoaxers, and the January 6th persecutors?
Excellent question. I thank you very much for your call, Alex. I am growingly optimistic. The question is whether our U.S. Department of Justice has the will. It's very clear that President Trump wants those who violated the law and the Constitution in their maniacal drive to destroy him and destroy those who supported him, like General Flynn and myself, be held responsible for their crimes. I don't realistically think, as I said earlier, this could possibly take place in the District of Columbia, where all of the judicial proceedings are colored and I think poisoned with politics. But this list is pretty clear. Put aside the question of Obama himself for a moment, but Vice President Joe Biden, National Security Advisor Susan Rice, Director of National Intelligence at the time, General James Clapper, John Brennan, the former CIA director, admitted communist Islamic convert, a man who got caught spying on a U.S. Senate committee that was investigating his use of illegal torture as a CIA director, a man who signed the visa for 4 of the hijackers that they tell us attacked America on 9/11. Robert Mueller himself, although I think he will argue that he is mentally incompetent and cannot stand trial. Andrew McCabe, the former assistant FBI director, Peter Strzok, another FBI official, Andrew Weissman, the epically corrupt federal prosecutor, man who got his start covering up mob murders in Brooklyn, then famously prosecuted the Enron case. The part he always leaves out is the fact that his victories in that case were overturned 9-0 by the U.S. Supreme Court. He destroyed both Enron, the company, plus their accounting firm, Arthur Andersen. He is without any question the single dirtiest cop in American history. That's why you find him on MSNBC giving legal analysis. But he destroyed evidence in the Russian collusion hoax. He destroyed the cell phone memories of the Mueller prosecutors after they were subpoenaed by special counsel John Durham. So I think that all of them will ultimately stand trial. I think that trial will take place, as I said earlier, in South Florida, presumably because this is, once again, a continuing seditious conspiracy. These are not one-off crimes. The same cabal that set up the Russian collusion hoax, that used 2 pieces of fabricated evidence, the so-called Steele dossier, which was paid for by Hillary Clinton and was completely fraudulent, accused the president falsely of dallying with Russian prostitutes while visiting Moscow as a private businessman, a complete and total fabrication. The aforementioned Andrew Weissman knew that from his days as the general counsel of the FBI, but they still used it as the probable cause, as the predicate to spy on Donald Trump's campaign, to go to the FISA courts and get a warrant to spy on Trump. Leslie Stahl, in all her huffiness, who rejected that claim in a famous interview with President Donald Trump, owes the president an apology. I won't hold my breath. But these are the same people who staged the 2 phony impeachments, who staged the Fedsurrection on January 6th, the same people who launched this massive tsunami of lawfare against Donald Trump in Nevada, in Georgia, particularly in New York State, where they tried to keep Trump off the ballot, tried to impoverish him, tried to put him in jail. I still think that justice will be done, if not under this Attorney General, then perhaps under the next one. But I'm gonna give Pam Bondi the benefit of the doubt, even though I don't think they were aggressive enough in the Eastern District of Virginia. But the president's intentions, I think, are abundantly clear. Whether this is under a RICO statute or not, I'm not the right person to answer that question because, of course, I'm not an attorney. But I do know that there's an egregious violation of law here, and everybody involved should be brought to justice. That's why you have lunatics like Peter Baker at the New York Times and others, Alan Foyer, another faker, another distortionist, claiming that it's Trump who is on a path of rage and what does he say, revenge and retaliation. Again, Peter Baker writes, Mr. Trump's campaign to imprison, fire, or otherwise punish his political foes and his use of government power to crack down on free speech, as he has done, has broken norms that stood for generations. No, Peter, those norms were broken by the Obama and Biden administrations long ago. So those who say, if we're tough on the Democrats, when they get back in office, they'll be tough on us. They already tried to destroy us. They already tried to send me to prison for 7 to 9 years, even though I made no relevant material misstatement under oath. The whole thing was a fugazi, just to pressure me into testifying falsely against President Donald Trump, which I, of course, refused to do. So this entire line of nonsense by the fake news media, the same people who insisted that Trump had been elected with the assistance of Russian intelligence, the same people who insisted that he improperly tried to pressure the Ukrainian president, when in fact what he asked the president to do was to expose the epic corruption of Joe Biden. We learned that only last week because the CIA did their own investigation and they confirmed that Joe Biden and members of his family had taken millions of dollars and that Biden had used the threat of withholding $1 billion in funding from the Ukrainian government in order to insist that the Ukrainians fire the prosecutor who was breathing down the neck of his son, Hunter Biden. So I'm still hopeful that justice will be done. And Alex, I thank you very, very much for your call. Let me go back to the internet. Sally in Toledo, Ohio, says, I read your book on the Kennedy assassination, and I loved it. What is your next book, and when will it be out? Well, thank you very much, Sally. My book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, makes the case that there was a conspiracy, I hate that word, that involved the Central Intelligence Agency, organized crime, in other words, the mob, Big Texas Oil, and certain banking interests. But at the helm of this was the man who had the most to gain, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Johnson was under investigation in 2 epic corruption scandals, the Bobby Baker scandal and the Billy Saul Estes scandal. So he was the man staring into the abyss, facing a lifetime in federal prison, which is why he lured John F. Kennedy to Dallas, why he laid out the motorcade route that took him through Dealey Plaza, which was completely unnecessary because Kennedy was going from the Dallas-Fort Worth airport to the Merchandise Mart, both of which are outside the outskirts of the city of Dallas. So I think that I have revealed the truth in this book. Again, I'm not saying Johnson did this alone, but I provide motive Means, and Opportunity, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. My next book is about the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. It is entitled Bushwhacked, the real story about the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan. In this book, I established that it's impossible for John Hinckley Jr. to have shot Reagan. Hinckley was crouching in front of Reagan at all times. He either got off 6 or 8 bullets, depending on whose eyewitness account you believe. Almost all the information coming from the National Archives is completely and totally redacted. So I had to do tough, incisive investigative reporting to prove that Ronald Reagan was shot from above and behind, and he was not shot with a conventional firearm. He was shot with a weapon specifically designed by the Central Intelligence Agency for political assassinations. That book will be out at Christmas, and I thank you very much for your question. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and when we come back, I'll tell you exactly who shot John F. Kennedy.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back. As I promised you, I will tell you now who shot and killed John F. Kennedy. Well, first of all, there are multiple shooters. This new documentary out from Paramount, What the Parkland Doctors Saw, has at least 7 doctors who are still alive saying that they saw wounds in Jack Kennedy at Parkland consistent with his being shot from the front and the back, which obviously means multiple shooters. But the shooter from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building is a man named Malcolm Mack Wallace. I say this because Wallace left his fingerprints on the scene. They're on the cardboard boxes in the so-called crow's nest from which they try to tell us Lee Harvey Oswald shot. No less than 6 eyewitnesses see a man who meets the physical description of Wallace in the window of the Texas School Book Depository building. Heavy set, balding, all of them saying wearing spectacles. Wallace was convicted in 1951 of first-degree murder. He shot and killed a man who was trying to blackmail Senator Lyndon Johnson, who was involved in a love triangle with Johnson's, shall we say, bohemian sister. So I believe that Wallace is the shooter. There's eyewitness and fingerprint evidence to prove that point. Many people don't know that in order to place Lee Harvey Oswald's fingerprints on the alleged murder weapon, FBI agents actually went to the funeral home where his body was being kept after he was shot in cold blood on national TV by Jack Ruby in order to place Oswald's hands on the stock of the gun and partially on the barrel. Just more of the incredible story of fraud that is really being uncovered by Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who chairs the House Oversight Committee's task force on the declassification of federal secrets. She, by the way, interestingly, recently got a 350-page dossier from the Russian government, information that they had withheld in the past. Now, we did know that in an earlier set of declassifications that FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover told President Lyndon Johnson that the KGB, Russian intelligence, had conducted their own investigation into the Kennedy assassination, and they had determined that, well, LBJ himself was the perp, and that he pulled off the crime with the assistance of Central Intelligence Agency and organized crime. So that, interestingly enough, was not included in this new dossier, although they did include the fact that they doubted that Oswald had the necessary skills as a marksman to possibly have gotten off the 3 shots that were told all shot and killed John F. Kennedy, allegedly all from behind. Gerald Posner who may be the last person alive in America who actually believes that Lee Harvey Oswald, acting alone, killed John F. Kennedy, has publicly expressed caution that these files could contain propaganda, but there's no reason to do so. There was never any evidence that the Russians were involved, nor the Cubans, in John Kennedy's assassination, even though Lyndon Johnson implied otherwise to U.S. Chief Justice Earl Warren in order to convince Warren to chair the commission, which essentially ran the entire cover-up. J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director, conducted his complete investigation into the murder of John F. Kennedy in 7 days flat, and then handed his conclusions, Oswald, 3 shots from behind, lone nut, communist defector, to 30-year-old Arlen Specter, the chief investigator and counsel, I think deputy counsel, to the Warren Commission, to be rubber-stamped. So there is the true story of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. I give enormous credit to Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. She very recently got the CIA to turn over documents that prove that they were aware of Oswald far earlier than they've ever admitted, and in fact they were tracking him, and she even named his handler. So huge credit to her. All right, I want to thank you all for joining the Roger Stone Show today. I'm sorry we didn't get to more of your questions and emails, but tune in next week and we'll take more questions. Until then, God bless you and, well, Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.